Hi everyone, welcome to the Car Chat podcast. I'm Sam Moores, and with me today I have Tom Ford. Hello.
Hello, how you doing?
Very good, thanks. Very good. Can you tell the audience a little bit about, short summary, who you are and what you do?
My name's Tom Ford. I'm a motoring journalist and I am also TV presenter, although that was a little bit back in the day now. I used to present a thing called Fifth Gear, and I've done Top Gear America, Mud, Sweat and Gears, some US shows, and now I write for Top Gear magazine. I used to be the road test editor of Car magazine, and I sort of specialise in weird stuff and adventure stories, which sounds terrible, but it's actually the best job in the motoring industry. So that's me.
I look at the things that you appear in that sort of come across my feed, and they're always like, wow, this is like either like super niche and quite interesting, or like you're doing some quite cool trip to often showcase something kind of a bit niche, but you've managed to like string it into quite a cool location and whatnot in the process.
Is it weird that my niche is niche? Like,
yeah, maybe.
I like my niches. I was talking to someone about this the other day, though. I used to be obsessed with supercars. And then as I've got older, I've kind of lost that thing for supercars.
Yeah.
And I just got obsessed with car culture. Like, the people in car culture are some of the best people in life. And you can find them all over the world. So if you can figure out where those people are and go and meet them, you'll have stories. And stories are what I'm about. I'm a writer. So I just like stories. So if I can find a story within a story, I'm all over it. And I have a horrible habit of working out where I want to go in the world and then making a story happen around it.
It's like, I feel like I've seen this. I've seen this happen. What was it? A good one when I was doing a little bit of research. You went and found, I can't remember, you'll be able to tell me what the roads are called, but basically like roads that are on sides of cliffs. And you took a small roads. Car. There you go.
Yeah. Well, the weird one with that was I've been down there in a Lambo, been down in southern France in a Lamborghini and found these amazing roads, but they're only about 7 feet wide. But I had a 6.5 foot wide Lamborghini. And I was like, these are amazing, but they're awful. You can't get two cars side by side. So if you're driving, they absolutely shred your nerves if you're in a big car. So I thought, well, what would be a good feature would be taking something tiny and going and investigating all those roads that you can't get down in a supercar. Because to be honest, they're not driving roads. They're too narrow, but the views are steal your breath kind of good. Yeah. So I went and got a Kia Picanto, which was the smallest car I could find. And I was having a bit of an obsess over we're losing all of our small cars. You know, little, simple hatchbacks. The Ford Puma's now their smallest car. The Fiesta's gone. And obviously I put a roof box on it because it was too small, which looked, I found the world's smallest roof box. It's only about 2 feet long. Nice. Whacked that on it, drove all the way down there, drove all the way down through France on the Balconette roads and had a wicked time. Got it on 2 wheels. Shouldn't have put my bags in the roof box.
Did that make it much easier to get on 2 wheels?
Yeah, there was a little bit of kind of drive very fast, lift, turn. But the photographer was going, I don't think you should do that again, Wookie, because it's looking fairly unstable. I was like, no, we're going to get this shot. Because I could feel it lifting the wheel. Yeah. And then I thought, I can get both off the floor. And that's that hold my beer moment. You're like, no, don't do that. Don't do that. Oh, we got the shot. Right. We're moving on. But that was one of my obsessions. And it still is, like going and having adventures in not crap cars, but just normal cars. Like, it's wicked. You can go out and do a road trip in a Ford Fiesta as well as you can. I mean, motoring journalism, you get given all the cool stuff. But it's often a bit more hassle than it is sexy.
Yeah, because presumably, well, you have been given lots of very nice cars over time to go and drive in lots of cool places.
Oh, God, yeah.
And the difference... What's the difference between someone, because I think a lot of people sum up what's your perfect road trip and they go, oh, it's going to be in a McLaren F1 GTR driving in the Dolomites or something or whatever, like, you know, let's say that. Well, the reality of the two different things, like doing it in the Kia Picanto versus doing it in an Aventador or whatever, what's the difference? And like, what's your perception of the difference?
It depends whether you're driving or you're road tripping.
Okay.
So
Yep.
if you're going to drive, you want to take something that when you get to those amazing roads, it satisfies the need you have of having a good drive.
Yeah.
If you're road tripping, it literally doesn't matter what you're in. It's about the people you're with. It's about the things you do. It's about the stopping, not the going. It's about the experience of it. So you can road trip in America in a land yacht, in something that doesn't, that's got, lazy boy seats. And I've really enjoyed conversations I've had on the road, because if you've got, 2 days of driving with somebody, you get to know them pretty well, pretty quickly as well. And you're not looking each other in the eye. So there's not that pressure of kind of staring down someone's barrel. So you just chat, and that's wicked. But if you're going driving, I really think it's frustrating as hell to drive a long way and get somewhere good and be in a car that doesn't handle.
Yeah.
Because you get there and go, this would be great if I was in an X. But equally, if you take something super extreme, I mean, I've taken some really extreme cars places, and I drove an Ariel Atom to the Arctic, for instance.
Nice.
And it was lonely.
Bold.
Yeah, it was bold. It was really effing cold as well. But it was lonely, really lonely, because it was hours and hours and hours of trawl for no chat, there's nobody there. And it just took a long time with spectacular scenery, but I was so cold and exposed and all that kind of, amazing thing to do. But if you can be as appropriate as possible, but we've got access to some of the best roads in the world, 3 or 4 hours away. 6 hours if you're driving up to Scotland, and you can make a road trip out of anything, really. I just don't think you have to put pressure on yourself to have a super cool car all the time. I think you can have fun in whatever you do it in. I love those. What are those rallies? Those rallies that they like buy a car for $2,000 and drive to Romania.
Mongol rally? Is that one of them?
Stuff like that. I met some guys on one of them. I was in a Lambo or something. They were in like a K1 Micra.
Yeah.
They were having the time of their life.
Yes.
And we were on the Transfagasiran. Mad road in Romania. They were down there. They were absolutely loving it. And I was in something super, super flash, and I kind of wished I was with them.
Yeah.
Picking up stray dogs.
It is. There is something about it. And it's, as you say, often it's the stopping.
Yeah.
And I find nowadays, I often don't leave enough time. If someone's lent me a car, I get to drive like some interesting stuff every now and then, and someone's lent me a car, but I don't have it for very long. And in my head, I'm like, you kind of want to stop and like take some photos and do.
That's
whatever.
2024 though. That's our lives. What's your favourite one you've done? What one sticks in your brain that makes you go, I really enjoyed that? Because sometimes you need a bit of time to get the perspective, don't you?
Yeah. Hands down, it would be. I've done a few trips with a couple of crazy mates to northern Sweden, Norway, winter, but in summer cars. And by summer cars, I mean like sports cars.
Yeah.
But we had a full mix of. I think I did it 3 times. Once at that point in time, I had a backdated SC that I just put on normal winters. And we had a selection of other stuff. Most of it was on studs. The Swedish guys were all like, one guy I think he had an RS6 and he had some like crazy ice tires that had, it was like 600 studs a tire or something that completely bonkers. And he was just driving around like he was on fresh hot slicks everywhere.
That's the problem with people up there. But also, you'll get those studs torn out. If you end up doing loads of tarmac, it pulls all the studs out.
Yeah.
And then you can beat them.
Yeah. But that was the most fun of doing it in like, we hired some, it was ridiculous. We hired some ice lakes. So we did a few days on ice lakes. We brought the cars. And we did all this stuff, but we had a full mix of cars. I think one guy had a little A1 Quattro that someone had lent him.
Oh, they're great.
That was awesome because it had a handbrake, and lots of the cars didn't have handbrakes, and it was forward drive and whatnot. But just driving those back roads, that was just nothing I've done is touch that from a driving, and also ridiculous. You're there going, this is ridiculous.
Yeah, this is cool,
and I might die, but it's ridiculous. But But let's cruise back a little bit into your past and sort of how we got to here. How did we? Not we. How? I presume you've been into cars for forever.
Yeah,
I feel like
usual
one of those
thing.
sort of people.
Always been into cars.
And then, how did you get your first job in the automotive business?
The automotive business. It's like it's quite. Everyone always asks me this, and I try and make it sound exciting, but it wasn't that exciting. Like I used to be in a kind of theatre group thing, touring, and got myself into just a bad spot. Went and lived in France.
Is that what it was called?
Yes, it was. Just started getting into a bit of a rut. Went to France to run a ski chalet with my then girlfriend, who turned out to be my wife. And I was sitting there, and she was going back to uni after from masters when I got back, and I just sat. I've been writing children's books, and
where did that come from? Stuff.
I just like doing it. I've always been writing, so I used to write for myself. And I sat there and thought, well, what am I going to do? Because you're a bit of a loser. I mean, a very cool loser, but still a bit of a loser. Yeah. So I sort of, have you ever seen the cartoons when a light bulb literally appears over somebody's head?
Yeah.
I went, what do I like? I like cars and I like writing. Oh, so when I came back, I tried to get on journalism courses. I tried to get a job as an office junior, and I went for every single job I could on every magazine, and they just said no because they would only take work experience and juniors who'd been on journalism courses.
Okay.
And so I did a postgrad in periodical journalism, managed to get on a course, don't know how, and then did work experience at Top Gear magazine at the time. And as I was coming to the end of my work experience, a job came up as an office junior, and I thought, well, that's fate. And the guy who was editor at the time said, we're not going to give you that job because you're too mad. And his name was Kevin Blick, and I didn't get that job, and then went and tried to get loads of other jobs again. I worked a lot as a driver, so I was delivering, just a delivery driver, drove lorries.
Yeah.
And then a job came up because somebody else had failed to turn up at Car Magazine. And it was when the internet was being invented, writing their road test magazine back catalogue into the internet to give them content.
Okay. Yeah.
And taking out all their date references and stuff like that. So I spent basically 6 months typing. But every time somebody didn't want to drive a car, or it was too boring, or couldn't be bothered, I'd immediately take it away, drive it, write things, do stuff. And then I just worked it up from there. But my cohort at the time was some of the legends of the industry. So looking back, you've got Hilton Holloway, Paul Horrell, Greg Fountain, Paul Gregory. They're probably Mark Walton, these kind of people that I was reading as a younger man. And then I was suddenly in an office with them. And I just used to sit there and listen to them. Honestly, I would get them bacon sandwiches and cups of coffee all day, as long as I could sit there and just go,
yeah,
because they were doing stuff that I'd read about, and they were the ones that inspired me to do it. And then I'm in an office with them. It was really, really good, and it taught me so much. But it's weird. It's like back in the day, I wasn't allowed to drive all the flash stuff until I'd driven other things and worked up to it, and done a lot more driving and formed opinions and written fake articles, essentially stuff that was never published.
Yeah. And
did a lot of that. And now you go into those offices and people don't get that opportunity. I was really lucky. And I think I was probably one of the last ones to get that kind of full force training.
Yeah, that seems to have changed. Like, from what I can gather, is like that period of time when we didn't have all the pressures of the internet and content right now.
I used to do features for 10 days.
Yeah.
10-day features for 10 pages. I think about that now and it's incredible.
Yeah.
You go off on an adventure feature for 2 weeks. And now I would struggle now to do more than 4 days, realistically.
Is that that's the limit?
That's pretty much the limit, which does limit you quite a lot. You know, and you know as well as I do that the good places to get to take a while to get to.
The Transfiguran Pass, that takes a bit of time to get to.
That is, you can fly into Romania though and get up it pretty quick. It's like if you want to do something in Chile or, because we've expanded quite a lot now. Like going to Norway, there used to be a ferry from Newcastle to Kristiansund, but that was a 25-hour ferry. But now you have to drive. You have to drive through Denmark. It takes freaking ages.
It does.
And God love Belgium, but you're not taking many pictures there. You know, It just takes a while. So everything's a bit expanded. And I sometimes want to talk to you guys who are a different generation to me and say, look, if we could slow it all down, you'd feel better about it.
100%. Well, I don't think, like, is it possible?
I don't know. You mentioned the internet.
You have to like turn left, don't you? You have to just like do something a bit different, I think, to...
Slow cooking journalism is better. Like in my opinion. So there's a load of people that go on car launches these days, and they are having to write their review of a car that's possibly taken 4 years to develop before dinner, and they've driven it for 3 hours.
Yeah.
On one particular type of road, which the manufacturer chose for them. It's not their fault. But, you know, they've driven it on the Ronda or something in Spain, which is super smooth, and they have to make a decision, and they have to get the copy in. Whereas, it's like, have you ever come away from a car and 2 days later gone, I actually think that's quite special, but my immediate reaction was,
yes,
it's too spiky or whatever it was, or it's crap. And then you've come back to it later and thought, no, I get it now.
I've had it very recently.
Go on, what was it?
I was driving this was quite a cool one. Thornley Kellum.
Oh, it wasn't the Outlaw Aurelia, was it?
No, but I want to drive that. It was their new 911.
Oh, yeah.
And we did a podcast and I drove the car. I didn't have to give my thoughts on it in any way, shape or form. But in my head, I was like, oh, this is quite fun. And then I was like, but it's kind of like every other 911 like that I've driven-ish. They're all nice. And then I was just sitting in the car, like this morning, driving somewhere. And I was like, oh no, there was something about the way it like turned here. And I was like, that was a bit different. That was different to like all the other ones that I can think of.
Yeah.
And it has a different front end.
It's nuance.
It's got some trick stuff. But that takes time, like these sorts of things.
They filter through.
Yeah. Have you bought a car before and gone, oh, I love this car, and then over time gone, not sure, and then come back full circle?
Have you ever seen the cars that I actually buy myself?
I've seen, yes.
They're shit.
Yeah.
They are generally shitters. I buy, no, but I drive an awful lot of stuff that I think I would be better off having driven for a bit longer.
Yeah.
And I drove the Singer Turbo a few weeks back. And I was the first person to ever drive a Singer and loved it because it didn't look like a flashy car.
Yeah.
You knew it was special, but you didn't really think it. You're just a Resto.
Just kind of an old 911 thing, yeah.
Yeah, and then when they started doing DLSs with box arches and wings and things,
the
I was
turbo
like,
one.
You've jumped the shark. I don't like jingle jangle LED headlights. I think they look crap. Personal opinion.
Yeah.
Then the turbo's gone back to being subtle.
Yeah.
I spent 2 days with both cars, and I still needed another 2 days to decompress that thought process.
Interesting.
Because I've got really bored of Resto modded 911s.
Yeah. There's a lot of them.
There's like 30 companies doing it. And, there's a market there, obviously, but I have to sort of sometimes get past my own prejudices. And sometimes that takes a little bit more time.
Yeah.
I have to decode it. And the trouble is, Top Gear wanted something online the day after. And I'm like, okay, I think I got it right. But I think if you'd have given me a week, I would have processed it more. So maybe it's me being old. I don't know.
Having had more time, what do you feel about those two cars now?
I think they're exceptional. and I think they're too much money. But money is a thing that keeps getting brought up a lot because something's only worth what someone's willing to pay for it, right? Yeah. So they've got 300 orders at $1.2 million each. Why would you not sell them at that?
Yes, and a DLS, I don't know when this will go out after this, or quite a bit after, I think, but a DLS sold at, was it RM or one of those ones for like $3 million or 3.5 or 2.5. It was a lot more than they cost.
The market has wobbled on them a lot though, because they're very specific to owners. So they've 100%. Been spec'd, bespoke and all that kind of stuff. But like I said, if someone's willing to pay for that, then it's worth that.
Yeah.
But I'm resto modding a Skoda Yeti because no, it's like, why aren't people doing like what's the midlife crisis kind of Porsche money? 75 to 100 grand.
Yeah.
Why aren't you getting resto mods that are in that arena?
Yeah.
That's possibly I always wanted Impreza.
Yeah.
And you get the P25. How much is that? £500,000?
It's a lot of money.
Lot of money. And you kind of look at it and go, that's ridiculous. Like, why isn't there more resto modded stuff that's a little bit more agreeable price wise? It all seems to be finger in the air, lick your finger, see which way the wind's blowing.
Yeah.
I want something cheaper. So I'm going to put proper suspension on the Yeti, keep it functional, Mexican blanket seats or tweed.
Mm-hmm. Oh, nice.
Which will be cool. Lift it, put some big tires. I do this a lot, by the way. This is not. Lift it, put some big tires on it. Lights, CBs, going to put some smiley faces on it.
Yeah.
And some graphics and do like my version of a cool Skoda Yeti. I reckon I can do it for like $7,500, including buying the car. Yeah. So it's kind of like, but that's the kind of thing I'm quite into now. It's like slightly odd things, like all the 911s. I just feel awash with 911s that are modified.
It is very easy to just look at the whole thing and go, "Yeah, all right, guys, just calm down." But you do get the flip side. I find I did a podcast with a guy called Goran Turkic. Apologies if I got that wrong. Who's Tedson Motors. It's a 911 Resto mod, and I approached the conversation and was like, before I chatted to him, I was like, it's just another 911, blah 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 blah. But the guy is actually really interesting and really into 911s. I think I asked him a little bit about his sort of car history or history before, and he owned like 6 911s between 74 and like 93 or something, because he liked to see the difference of the different ones. I was like, okay, you're really into this. This is not just like I've decided I'm going to do a 911 and make a...
Yeah, he's passionate.
Make a thing. But your point about the prices, I struggle with it because it's just crazy money. But I think I'm starting to just disconnect it and go, but there's a customer.
I'm ignoring it now.
I think that's what you have to do.
It. It's like if you watch the YouTube comments, everyone's just going, well, it's not $1.5 million. And I'm like, no, it's probably not. But we're not buying them. What is $1.5 million worth of car? I could build that car for probably $500,000. Genuinely. I could get the right people, the right suspension, probably less. But maybe. But
the more I talk to these people, the more I realize that they're like, oh, the bodywork alone took 2,000 hours. You're like, ooh.
Yeah, it might not be quite as good, but I could definitely build it. It's like if there's a market there, it doesn't matter what it costs. But yeah, I'm starting to divorce myself from it. I've just driven another one, a resto mod on a 914 by 1511.
Oh yeah, I drove that. Cool.
And great, really good fun car. What did you think to it?
So I drove it about November last year, and I thought it was cool, but I didn't want one. But I drive a lot. There's a lot of stuff I drive, and I think I just look at it from but do I want to own this? And then I go, no. But
yeah, you see, I don't ever think that because I don't want those kind of things. Like the sports cars aren't my thing, but
Yeah.
I drove it and thought it's interesting that it's a rally car company that's done the suspension because you can feel that. I thought it felt more like an Exige.
Like a rowdy Exige.
Like a rowdy Exige. So if you guys don't know, this thing is sort of 350, 400 horsepower, weighs under a ton, manual. And it's a 914 Porsche, but it's got the guts of a Cayman S 987. Yeah. So no traction control, which always makes me raise an eyebrow. And I think we've got me doing a bit of a catch on camera when I wasn't paying attention and it went over a bump. And I had to recover that car back out of whatever it was going to do. But mega thing, I thought this is a really good toy. 350 grand.
Yeah.
And I was like, but it's a 914. The point of a 914 was that it was the cheap one. Like, that's what Porsche were looking for. It was a VW in disguise. You know, it seems ridiculous to have a 350 grand 914. That is the weirdness. But when people have got car collections of 60, 70, 100 cars, they're looking for uniqueness and bespokeness and something different. And it was genuinely different. So you have to ignore the price and just go on, did you enjoy it?
Yeah.
Did it make you feel away? And it definitely made me feel away.
Yeah.
Mostly scared.
That one was a good one of when you meet the people behind it.
I love
Did you go out with Ben?
Yes,
Ben?
I love him. He's so handsome.
And,
he's so handsome and quiet.
And really fast.
Oh, no, I didn't. He didn't drive me.
He didn't drive you at all.
Both sons. So there's a dad and two sons.
Yeah.
Just to fill you in. This thing is from Mellors Elliott Motorsport, which is an old rally car outfit. And there's a father and two sons. The father can drive. The two sons have inherited his sort of driving DNA. And but I loved hanging out with them. Did you go up to the place in Bakewell?
Yes. Yeah, and had a look round.
It's great.
It was cool.
But Ben's got a Celica. Did you see his rally Celica? He's got. I'll text you a picture. But I just wanted to have a go in that. I was like, can I come back and just have a go in that? And he was like, yeah, of course you can. Can you write that about that first? I was like, yeah, it's fine. But yeah, all of that stuff. But you see, that felt like engineers making a car and then Ben designing something pretty.
Yes.
Rather than someone designing something pretty and then trying to engineer it back to standard.
Agreed.
You know what I mean?
Which is much more interesting to me.
Yes, it's a story. We're back to stories, aren't we? We're back to stories. You know, that car got better the faster you drove it.
Yeah.
And the more you committed to it.
Which I didn't. I didn't commit at all. I was like, I'm just going to drive this. I'm aware that it's still a work in progress and it's not my car. That one, yeah, it was. I've had a few. You must have had so many places like this. Can you give me an example of somewhere you've turned up and you go, oh, we're going to look at this car. Maybe you've done a lot more research than me and you actually know the place you're turning up. But you suddenly turn up and go, oh, this is who. Like, that's what happened with them. I turned up and went, oh, you guys run WRC cars?
Yes.
You actually run WRC cars?
And develop them.
And develop them. You probably know something about handling and suspension and what makes a car good down a road.
Yeah. And you've got to be careful of not judging or predisposing your brain to thinking that it's just another.
Yes.
You know, it's just another one of these. Because until you've actually got there and done some chat and figured it out, you could be heading into a whole world of pain.
Yeah.
Like with them, you could say, oh God, you've just decided to do this. And then you find out what goes into that car and who's done it. And then you go, oh, right, it's probably the right kind of engineering.
Yeah.
It does happen a lot. There's a lot of people in America you've got to be really careful of because you'll get there and it turns out that they are, you know, motorsport outfits that have got a sideline.
Yeah.
Especially off-road racers. You find out they've got, 59 national championships. And you go, oh, okay, you might know what you're doing then.
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
I've been really enjoying cars lately, though. I've been really enjoying the variety of stuff that I'm doing. Have you been finding that?
I've had a re-tick in doing all this stuff recently in the last like month, and visiting people and stuff's been great. I feel like you have spent a reasonable amount of time in Japan.
Oh yeah, I love Japan.
And come across some crazy, wacky, wonderful stuff.
Just go out at night. That's all you have to do. Or go with Mark Riccioni. Have you ever heard of a photographer called Mark Riccioni?
I sort of know who he is. I've not met him.
So he's obsessed with Japan to the point where he's weird about it. But if we go out there, it's so good for car culture. And weirdly, I went to China this year for the first time and discovered they have no car culture. So it's just not a thing. It's very transport orientated. So they've got a completely different taste. So that was fascinating to find in Japan, a tiny little island relatively. There's this huge car, especially around the metropolises, Tokyo and stuff. There's this huge car culture. And you go to China, and not really bothered. But I do go to Japan a lot, and that's all the people stories, because I talk to people with my hands and wave at them, and we always get the message across. and I always seem to get into trouble with gangsters, but that's not my fault. I don't think.
What are you doing when you get in trouble with gangsters?
It's usually because they've got a really weird car, and I'll march over and sort of start talking to people, and they're like, no. Toby, there's a guy called Toby who's a photographer, Toby Thayer, and he is a photographer, but he's also living out there teaching English as a foreign language, and he's like, no, Wookie, please, no, don't go over there, stop doing that. And you're like, no, come on, Toby, you'll be fine. We got this guy to turn up to a shoot. I was out there looking at all the next gen hypercar concepts, like next gen, the Hyperforce. Have you seen the Nissan Hyperforce? It's supposed to be leading you on to. It looks like the Batmobile made by manga comics,
right?
Like next gen MR2, next LFA.
Oh yeah.
So Daikoku parking area just got a load of people to come down in the original versions. This guy turns up in a white LFA on gold BBS. With a full tubey. That's the Hyperforce, yeah. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's pretty funky.
And he turned up in this thing, and I thought he was a yak, to be honest. I thought he was a Yakuza.
Yeah.
And everyone was really wary around him. Turned out he was a cosmetic surgeon. So it's me being all like, oh, gangster.
There's a gangster.
Yeah, he was doing people's nose jobs.
I'll cut you up.
We'll literally tie you down and slice you up. But I thought that was quite good fun. But yeah, we spent a couple of weeks out there early this year, and then went and found. So what Top Gear allows me to do is I'll go and do their big stories that they want, and then they'll give me half a day or a day to go and do some of my own stuff.
Okay, yeah.
So I went and met a load of young people who are really into old 80s Volvos. It's not a big car club, and their cars are so mint, but it's super niche. It's like, I know we like Volvos over here, but it was like in Japan, they're not cool. Like if you imagine what you could have in Japan, and they're just rolling around in Volvo estates and they love it, and they call it slow life. So it's kind of an abdication of all that kind of scary, tense, stressy stuff. Get an old Volvo and you roll around and you put your wrist on the top of the steering wheel and you just fart about in these old Volvos. And they were lovely. And I just spent 5 hours like knocking around in old Volvos in Japan. And the cognitive dissonance between I'm in an old Volvo, but I'm also in Tokyo eating a burger with a geezer called Hiro who owns the burger shop. And he's just like, yeah, I just like Volvos because it's slow life. It was cool. It's really cool. And we'd been to see Magarigawa. Have you seen that racetrack yet? Just outside Tokyo?
I've seen photos and stuff. This place looks mad. Like
a James Bond, racetrack, mega millionaire place. Yeah. And to go from like mega millionaire, whose track taxi thing that they said, the guy said, I'm not going to let you go around here in the hire car, which was a Subaru Levorg automatic estate. He just turned around and goes, well, what do you want? And I went, well, what do you mean, what do you want? And he pointed down this row of cars and said, well, just choose one and you can use it. So I chose a GT3 RS 3.8. in
nice.
in the red and white colours that I first tested it in, 12 years ago? And I was like, this is all sliding doors. It's getting a bit weird. And then the guy who was coming down to test his McLaren Senna cancelled, and I had 4 hours on Magaragawa on my own in a GT3 RS.
That's pretty cool.
Which was just like, I don't want to sound ungrateful, but I've done enough laps now.
Yeah. Presumably, did you get to the point where, and I definitely find this, where you're like enjoying yourself so much that you're like pushing it, and then part of your brain goes, now's probably a good time. Now,
I was going to have an accident.
Now you need to come in.
I was going to have an accident. And this car had like 3,000 miles on it. And I think I put about 40 more just track miles on it, which is, what's that? It's probably 500 miles normal road driving. And I was this is just getting silly now. But everyone's so polite, they wouldn't tell me to get off. So I was just like, wow. I did have good fun though.
They might have been just like, yeah, whatever. Like, go for it. Very
hard to tell. There was a very large group of Japanese men. Sometimes it can be difficult to tell whether they hate you or you think you're brilliant.
Yeah.
So I tend to err on the side of caution. By the way, I'm sorry I keep dabbing my head. I've just had my hip replaced. Ooh. And I've now become a cyborg, and I've got carbon and titanium hip, and my meds make me sweat. So I look really hot in all of this.
And this was not long ago, was it?
6 days.
Okay, a week.
A week.
And can you like walk around and stuff like sort of fine?
I can walk. Yeah, I've got a stick. Do you want to know? I'm a big fan of gadgets, right? So the best thing about having this is discovering the litter picker's grabber.
Oh.
The things I have discovered you can do with this is, my wife is not appreciating that. But it's brilliant. But yeah, I'm a bit cooked. And do you know what? I'm 48 and I've been driving for 30 years. I can't drive for 4 weeks, and this will be the longest I've ever not driven for.
Oh.
In 30 years.
Are you lining up the first drive back?
S-Class in the back seat.
Yeah.
I try and find something really soft. I just want to find something with very, very soft suspension. But yeah, it's really weird though, because you forget how much of your life is cars. You know, I live in the countryside. Where do you live? Do you live
West
down
London?
South? Yeah, so it's not too bad. I live in the countryside where nipping for something is a car.
Yeah.
You know, and suddenly you're quite isolated if you don't have a car.
And so it's your right leg? Is that right?
My right leg, yes. So the one with all the tattoos on. So this is quite widely known, but I've got a very, very big tattoo of a V8, a twin turbo V8 on my right-hand side of my body. And it stretches from the small of my back to my knees. And they've put a 16-inch scar through the whole... It's through the open headers. I've got open headers tattooed on the backside of my leg. And the ECU. So he's gone straight through the ECU. And I spent thousands on that tattoo. Now it's got a big frickin' line through it.
Yeah.
And I spoke to my tattoo artist and he went, "It looks cool." That was it. That's all he said. Just looks cool. I was like, no.
Can you tattoo scar tissue?
Yes, but it's more specialist. So my tattooist did a lot of, when women have had reconstructive breast surgery.
Yeah.
He would tattoo breast nipples on. Breast nipples? No, just nipples. Like realistic nipples.
Yeah.
It's a specialist thing, but people can do it. Yeah, I just don't know how to sort of deal with a great big straight lightning bolt through an ECU. It looks like I've had a failure.
Yeah, you need some super trick, someone to spend a bit of time working out how you can just slightly maybe modify the engine.
Move it around. Yeah.
Fit a different ECU, slightly different design.
If it was real, I'd be scrapping the block.
Yeah.
But now it's all a bit wonky. But that's why I look slightly pale and a bit sweaty, is because all the time I've just been running around and thinking, yeah, I don't like having surgery. I stayed awake as well. So I decided to have an epidural.
Oh, interesting. Was that freaky?
Yeah, that's not cool. Like, don't do it. No, you can do it. It's fine. But
halfway through, you're like, yeah, okay, whoa, just put a bag over my head.
I fell asleep. And that goes to show that I really... So if you ever want the best road trip advice is if you can sleep anywhere, you will be served well on road trips if you can just go to sleep wherever you want. I fell asleep on an operating table while they were chopping my leg off.
Yes.
So I was quite pleased with that. I really can sleep anywhere.
Play.
When they bring the power tools out, no.
Did you see, there was a video that came out recently, and you might know the wider story of... in my head just went JD Sports, not JD Sports, JD Classics. A guy called JM just did quite a long video about the story of the sort of recent JD Classics, big failure, departure. Anyway, the guy that had all of his money taken off him in this process, very unfortunately for him, through some very dodgy dealings, he invents hip replacement technology. That's one of his companies. His company, I can't remember what it's called. Been around for a long time. And anyway, in part of this video, he's showing like some of the stuff in a hip replacement. Like he, I think, handmade these metal on metal joints. Is yours metal?
Mine's metal, yeah.
And he was talking about the process of how to actually make it, and saying how it was really, really hard because they're actually a crazy trick.
A lot of it comes through, but I'm still convinced that we need to invent things. You know, when you go to see big car collections, really sexy car collections of really cool stuff.
Yeah.
And then if it's not someone really obvious like a celebrity, you'll find that it's the guy that invented Tetra Pak.
Yes.
Or, you know, what do you do? What do you do? There's a guy I know that makes the wrappers for prepackaged food. You know, the cardboard things.
Yeah.
He's hugely wealthy. So all of those big car collections are generally owned by people who have a completely unrelated rando invention.
100%.
And I keep trying to think of that thing that's going to allow me to have that car collection, which is, but I'm not clever enough. So it would be like a medical thing, or, you know, a new way of sealing envelopes or something like that.
Those are the two paths, aren't they, to spending a lot of time with cool cars. It's one, like journalist and try and drive everyone else's cars. And then...
That's the best way because you don't have to insure them.
Yeah. Yeah. And you can just try them out and then give them back.
It's like being a grandparent. You can have the baby over and then give the baby back when it needs feeding. That's
exactly. I don't want to do the servicing.
No, I'd like to give it back now. It's like being a grandparent. What else is there? Try and be rich. Like, I know some finance guys. They've got some great cars, don't get to drive them, because to be that top end of their business life, they aren't necessarily, some are, but they're not necessarily around to have the exciting, they can't take 3 weeks off and go and do a driving holiday in their F40.
Definitely not until they're much older.
And then they become a cliche. It's like, oh no, I've had this F40 for 25 years, but I didn't drive it when I was cool.
It's done 400 miles because I just don't have time.
Yeah, and I think sometimes you've got to get that balance between getting out and about in things and earning enough money to do it.
Yeah. What you've been around, I've seen some videos of you visiting some collections and stuff recently. What was the most interesting one you've been to you?
I've been to a few. I mean, I want to do more private collections, the bigger private collections, because I've been to a lot of manufacturer ones.
Right.
And essentially it just feels like they are collecting things because it's historical and of note. Yeah. So they're just getting, like, the secret halls at Porsche. It's not the secret halls. It's just the ones they can't fit in the museum. So, like, the secret halls have been done by every YouTuber in the world.
Yes.
And I don't feel like there's as big a story there. I thought Zama was really interesting. That's Nissan's one, because they've got all the Datsun stuff.
Right.
And all their race cars. And things like silhouette races, you know, the kind of manga-y, like, look like Time Attack, but from the 80s. Stuff like that is really interesting. But the ones that I think offer an insight into somebody's mind I think would be better. What have you been to that you like? Yeah, because people get more, they're more interesting, they're more unique and eclectic. Have you ever been to one where you've gone, this guy is me but rich?
I haven't, because my brain almost is like the anti of having a car collection.
Because you want to drive them.
I know, I just don't want to have a car collection. I think I don't want to own 100 cars.
No, I don't.
I'd rather own 2.
Yeah.
Like there's some logistical problems of getting to drive all the stuff you want to drive, etc. But like the idea of having a big thing full of like 100 cars, that I'd want to do the Jay Leno thing of being like, you can drive them all. But he's got like a car for each day of the year. And
but do you feel like your car sometimes says something about you?
Yes, and I wonder which way round that is. Like, why do I care what my car says about me? And like, what image am I trying to portray with my car? Like, how do you feel about this? Like, let's say your Yeti, modified Yeti. Do you think of that as like, this is what I want, it's really cool? Or is that part of it that's like, I also want to be the person that's driving a modified Yeti?
A bit of both. So I think it's cool and I'll do it anyway. But I also know that the people that I think are cool will go, oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Like, and it's subversion, isn't it? Like, everyone expects me to drive flash cars. Well, then none of them are my cars. I'd rather have something unique or funny or interesting or useful. But I agree with you. I would rather have 2 or 3 cars that I absolutely adored that were very me. So that were very me. So you'd always know it was my car. You know, you'd go, oh, it looks like something he'd drive.
So if I was going to give you like a few different price brackets.
Yeah.
Let's say I gave you like 100 grand. What would be a very you car? What would you like for 100 grand?
I'd get an old. Oh, I hate these questions because I always think of 400 different ones. That's going to stump for me. 100 grand is a lot. I did notice the other day though that like a stock 911 is £99,000.
Yeah,
it's expensive, but that's a pretty good deal, isn't it?
Can you get one for 99 now? Can you actually take one home?
In theory, if you don't, that's including VAT. So 99,800. And I just thought, I hate the journalist cliche of 911s. Again, we're back to 911s. I freaking hate them. I don't think I'd drive one, but I just thought that was actually quite good value. I think I like, what do I like? You see, I sort of go between off-roaders and I really love lifted estates because I think they do really good jobs. But I don't think I'd buy anything new. I think I'd buy something for 50 and then mod it to make it mine. So, I love Volvo cross countries.
Yeah.
And I'd probably mod one out, but I'd mod it quite heavily.
Yeah. Put some chunky tires on, some lights.
I'd lift it. I'd do something like that. But my accessibles, because I drive this stuff, the lucky thing about my job and your job is that I get to drive the flash stuff. I don't think I aspire to have it. If you drive a Ferrari, I very often don't aspire to own one. It's not something I'm interested in. I'd rather, it's like if you look at stuff like Johnny Smith owns, he's got loads of different weird stuff.
Yeah. Lots of interesting weird stuff.
Yeah, but that's more. But he's got too many cars. He's got way too many cars. Doesn't drive them all. But that's more where I'd be. I'd probably be messing around with stuff more than buying one vehicle. Though I did drive recently, and this was a bit of a one. I went on the G-Wagon launch to drive the EQ. And they had the new diesel G-Wagon in like a sand colour with an off-road pack. And it had 750 miles of range and twin tanks and all this kind of stuff. And it was really comfy. And I just thought, this is so good and so quiet and not very big. G-Wagons aren't very big. And I just thought I would drive this. I would daily it, but I would never sell it. I would keep it and give it to my children and to my children's children, and it'd become a family heirloom, and it'd have a name. And they're the cars I'm interested in. So if you could get me into one at the second-hand one of them for $100,000, that's what I'd do.
I've been pondering this recently of like, a car has to have like a purity of purpose.
Absolutely.
And with modern, let's say, cars that have come out in 2024, I feel like with regulations, we're starting to go away from that. For example, a perfect example, I think, new M5.
Ooh, controversial, Samuel.
Well, is it? It's like 2.5 tons. Now, what's the point? The manufacturer has to make it. They've got good engineers, some sort of design direction that they're going for, etc. Blah, blah, blah. They've got some funny lights on the front, all that sort of thing. But what is an M5 owner looking for? Now, maybe I don't know, because maybe I'm not.
I think it sometimes depends on where you are. So if you're in Germany and you do a lot of Autobahn, or it can be market specific. So if you're in America and you do some long journeys, M5s make a lot of sense. They're very powerful. Admittedly, you can't use that speed particularly, but on the Autobahn you could. I think sometimes we UK specific people get a bit blindsided by it doesn't work for us, so therefore it doesn't work.
Yeah.
I just think weight is the biggest thing we're going to be looking at generally over everything. And I completely agree with you. I need to be made to feel some sort of way by a vehicle for it to hit me. And I look at that and go, what's your favourite M5? Mine would be the 400 horsepower manual E46? No,
somewhere around there.
You know,
that period of time. I don't know though, because I probably look at it from what would I use this car for? And for me, that car is a long distance cruiser, put some family in it, occasionally drive fast.
Go for Potter.
So I probably would prioritize comfort and a bit of technology and a decent sound system and stuff like that, which almost removes the point of having an M5.
Yes.
So I have an E63.
Love them. Is it
2021 estate, yeah.
Yeah, perfect.
And I had it for like 2 weeks, and then my brain went, why did you buy this?
Because they're brilliant.
Like, it's a great car, but it's not the car for what I use it for. Like,
duality means it chips away at its purity, is what you're saying.
Yeah, like I think it could be more refined because it's got big tires. It's like a bit of tire raw. It's like it's plenty comfy enough, but it could be a bit better riding. I just use it for long journeys with family, driving down motorways.
I'd rather have an E300D.
Yes, I think now I would go 350 because I want the V6.
Yes, but that's the car I do that car with. That's the pairing I do that with. It's that kind of having a car to do a specific job has always appealed to me, you know. But don't like the G-Wagon suits a diesel.
Yes,
it really suits a diesel. It's fabulous as a diesel. It's brilliant as a G63, but you're fighting against exactly with the E63 estate. I used to have a white one of them, by the way. Funnily enough, I used to have a white one of them, and I took a load of pictures of me doing full, like proper drifting in it. And then somebody sent me the picture of it in the dealer, and it literally said one owner, very lightly used. And then the next picture was like clouds and clouds of smoke, fully on the lock stops at Dunsfold on the Hammerhead. And he went, yeah, it's the same number plate. I don't think this dealer knows where this has been, because it was a press car that had gone somewhere else.
Yeah.
I love all that sort of stuff. So in town, I would have an electric Super Mini. I just would.
Yeah.
I like the fact that you can pick and choose. You don't have to have the same car that does everything. So a good example for me would be people saying, oh, it's a track car for the road. I'm like, why?
Yeah,
I'd rather go and buy an old M3 and strip it out and use that on a track and have a road car.
Yeah.
I don't need or want that track car to be driven to the track. I understand it, it's cool. But a GT3 RS, I think you look like a dick in Tesco. And yet, when you get to a track, you'll get beaten by stuff that's track specific.
Yeah. And there's that point in time, and different brands I think have had it at different points in time, where those sorts of cars were road cars, and then they crossed over into the track car side, and actually, like the new GT3 RS,
mega track car. It's a pretty good road car actually,
it's quite
but
compromised as a road vehicle in terms of just like boot space and stuff like that. That sort of thing annoys me.
Also, it compromises your street cred because you turn up into a normal shopping street, and apart from 8-year-old boys, everyone thinks you're a bit of a ding dang.
Yeah.
And unless you are absolutely on it on track, everyone thinks you're a bit of a ding dang. So you can't win.
No.
Like, I'd rather go in a Saxo VTS to a track day and beat everyone.
Yes, I did.
Then turn up in a big weapon.
Some test days in a Citroen C1 and a bit of racing and stuff, and like that's a perfect example of like you're in a prepped race car that's like you're pretty slow,
and that will teach you more about your driving.
And you're rinsing people in like a 458 or something. Mm-hmm. And you're in a C1 with 70 horsepower.
It's a full 70 though. It's a full 70.
It's a full flat, flat everywhere.
And I bet you're having more of a laugh.
You're always having more of a laugh in basically the shittest car on track, as long as it's not breaking down. Like,
and that translates to everything else though. So it's kind of get a car that does what it does well.
Yeah.
That does what it does with the biggest smile on its face, and then you'll be all right.
Yeah.
You know, the only thing, like a lot of supercars that we drive, they're pretty useless in the UK because they're too big. Like, I really like a Cayman because where I live, a Cayman is a really useful size.
Yep.
And I don't need big power because I live on countryside lanes. You give me a Revuelto, it's great for the high street. I can't drive it as fast as a Cayman GT4 because it's just too big. So where do they work? Where do supercars really work?
I mean, you also can't drive any of these sports cars that fast. Really, you could drive a hatch probably faster than lots of sports cars.
I think that's genuinely true. Okay, here's a question: how much horsepower do you think is enough horsepower on the road? Because on tracks it doesn't. You know, you can actually use it, but
how light a car can we have?
1,800 kilos. So a sports car like a 911. Where's your point?
For me, in those sorts of cars, 500. But
That's
you don't
perfect.
need.
You are correct.
and you can mess with the ratio. So if your car's 1,500 kilos and it's 500 horsepower, if you've got a 1,000 kilo car, it can be like 300 horsepower or whatever.
Power to weight.
Like the power to weight.
And people forget about torque as well.
And like, obviously torque.
I road torque more than I use power, especially where I live. Again, but I'm talking about where I live, you see. So I live up in Lincolnshire. So I'm always talking through the lens of my own use.
Yeah.
And I think 500... I mean, I've driven Veyron Supersports all over the place. 1,000 horsepower, easy 1,000 horsepower cars. But they're no more fun because you end up wrestling with them and holding on to them rather than driving them. So this is what's happening with a lot of the electric cars. I've been driving very, very high horsepower electric cars. They just get to a corner a lot quicker. They're not necessarily... I love electric, by the way. I'm a big EV advocate, but they are not sports cars. They're good, cheap horsepower. That's all they are.
Yeah.
And it doesn't necessarily make it a satisfying car. So I'm going the other way, back to the Resto mods conversation, where I want something that's going to be, if I'm going to drive for driving's sake, I want something maybe slow, that's very tactile, that I maybe have to get right, that I have to learn to drive, that has a few quirks, that challenges me. You know, all those kind of things. And you end up in a different space.
It is. And it definitely seems to be, it's a journey. And it's, I try and like judging, saying, oh, you know, these Resto mods are £1 million and going, well, that's ridiculous. You kind of have to remove that. But also I realize now that like where I am in my journey is unique to me. And everyone else I meet, the person I saw a guy near me drive past in a Hurricane Evo, Roadster, Spider, whatever they're called. And he had like the music cranked as he drove into the like car parking space next to the coffee shop. And then as he left, he was like, like in town. And I'm like, I'm not that person. But actually, there was a point in time when I was that person.
Yeah. We've all been there. And he thought he was a don.
He thought he really was cool.
He thought he was a don. And I agree completely. I used to have some mates with some very high-end cars, and they'd see a Fiesta with a cherry bomb back exhaust or, Pico big bore, and they'd be like, oh, God, so shit. Why don't they just get a proper sports car? It's like, because he's 18.
Yeah, he's got no money.
And he's got 300 quid a week. You were that guy, though. We were all that guy at some point. I did not have a Huracan Evo, but, I had all sorts of daft stuff. And I think, you're right. It's the datum points on your car journeys. I've been lucky enough through my job to have the supercar experience, and I've discovered it's possibly not for me. But it's cool to have been and lived it, because don't forget, nobody knows that they're not mine. So I wave at people, hello, yes, hello.
And people ask you, don't they? They're like, oh my God, you've got this owned by the factory, blah, 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 one-off concept thing. And you're like, yes, that's mine, obviously.
Yep, I just picked it up yesterday. But it's like I've been lucky enough to live that and then realised that that's not me. I don't really like that. I do like to be noticed, though. So, like, I got a Dacia Duster and slammed it and put graphics on it because I love it. But it's not an expensive car. So I still like to be like, I like a bit of attention.
And you want the right people. Attention. The right people that, like, know, who are not the people that if you've rebadged an SL with the bigger engine badge, like the right people notice. The people that know that was an interesting car in the first place know that you've done the wrong thing. This is like, people go, oh yeah, I like what you've done with that. And
I like that. Cool. I like
we can
that
have
idea.
A conversation.
We can chat about that. Like every time I keep saying I'm going to do a car with Mexican blanket interiors, all the car guys go, oh yeah, I can see that. Or tweed. Like, I want more tweed in cars. This is a campaign about, and they're like, they think you can see them go, tweed. Yes, I can see tweed. But it's kind of just getting cars that provoke interest rather than make people wonder whether I'm rich. Yeah, I think that's where I'm at. I don't care about looking rich. I just care about being interesting.
And being able to have that experience of driving the crazy, expensive stuff, to then sort of come out the other side. I don't know when it's coming out the other side, because I think you can often go down different journeys. Like, I've owned quite a few expensive things, and I'm sort of coming back down off that and gone, I have a better idea of what I like.
Which one of the expensive things got closest to what you thought it was going to be in your head?
So I had a few Ferraris that of various levels of what I thought they were going to be. So F40, awesome thing, like that was cool, but it became too much of a thing.
Did that become your entire personality?
Well, I did not. 100% any of the Ferraris that I've owned, a few people have referred to me as the person that owns that car, and I try to be like, oh, but I'm not that person. Like, for whatever reason, I don't want to be the person that owns that car. I don't want to be introduced as the guy who went to a wedding when I had a Lusso, and someone just said, oh, you're that guy with the Ferrari. And I was like, yeah, but no.
It's like the old ladies in the village refer to me as my dog's dad.
Exactly.
I'm Frank's dad.
Yeah,
I'm not a human being on my own recognizance.
When I was at a kids class with he's now 2.5, but it was probably like 1 at the time, and they're doing an introduction, and they're like, "Oh, hi, what's everyone's names?" And they mean the kids, and I was like, "Hi, this is his name," and then I was like, "Oh, I'm Sam," and everyone just looked at me like, "What are you doing? We don't care who you are."
Yeah.
We don't ask your parents their names. It's like, what the hell?
I don't need to relate to you. Why would I even care what you do? You could die now and no one would care. Yeah. So the F40 was a thing, but you sort of...
It was awesome.
Grew through it.
And it became too much of it's an F40, it's worth X amount of money. If someone scratches it, if you bin it. I didn't feel like I would bin it when I was driving it, but like, you know, all these sort of thoughts go back in your head. And I went, the reality was I didn't drive it. And I liked having it, but I didn't drive it. And then that eventually went like, no.
Because you're a car guy and having a car and not driving it is kind of not the point.
Yes. And it was like one of the questions I ask, and I'll ask you this later, is like, what's your 5-car garage? And people having to ask whatever number we're on now, 210 or something, ask that question that many times and you realize you own 5 cars. And you realize if you sold all 5 cars, you would not rebuy those 5 cars.
That's very interesting, isn't it?
I think that's quite a good twist on that question of like, if you sold all the cars you owned right now, I don't know how many you own, but if you sold them all and took that amount of money, how would you redistribute that in cars? I feel like that's quite a good question.
And therefore, why don't you do it?
And why don't you do it? And it was the why don't you do it part that started to get my head. And I was like, oh, Sam, you need to just like sell a bunch of cars, rebuy, try some different stuff.
Yeah. Also try stuff that you didn't think you'd like.
Yes.
Because that might offer something else again.
Indeed. And in an ideal world, you do the journalist route of driving someone else's car quite hard for a reasonable amount of time. A few hours, a few days, like a road trip with a mate. That's a great one. You try their car or whatever. You get to have a huge part of that ownership experience without having to really decide
whether you're going to spend anything on it.
Yeah. And like, what is it about buying that car or owning that car that I want? Is it driving the car? Or is it actually, I've always liked the styling or the image or the feeling of what I'm going to be like driving something like that? Like, do you have any... Okay, that question. If you sold... How many cars do you own at the moment?
3.
3. If you
but they're all very practical.
But do you need 3?
No. Well, I'm going to buy a Fiat 500 in about an hour.
So
one of my kids.
Okay. If you sold all of those cars, would you rebuy the same ones?
Only the Yeti.
Okay.
Because the Yeti is so specifically useful and so uniquely useful because I can't figure out what I'd replace it with.
Yeah.
At all. And I think that's good design as well. That's a car that fits so neatly into doing what it needs to do for me right now, is that there is no other car that I could do anything else like that with. There is literally nothing else. Skoda's basically screwed up not replacing the Yeti and having like more SUVs. Yeah, I think the Yeti, I would buy more Yetis. I'd just have a fleet of Yetis. By the way, when your kid gets older, things like Skoda Yetis, which are very uncool, cheap to insure.
Oh, yeah. Useful.
You try putting them on a Mini, you can't do it because it's semi-culty. Try putting them on a Granny's Yeti. That's like £5.50. Yeah. And every child goes, not driving that. And I'm like, wait till I finish modifying it. Then you'll want to drive it.
And also, you're not allowed to drive anything else. So
yeah, and you can't drive it. So it's that or nothing. That's where I think I'd be. I just go and buy. I think I'd buy something like I'd buy a G-Wagon diesel, but one with clear glass, all that kind of stuff. I'd have a lifted estate. Sports cars is always hard for me because I'm not super into them.
Why do you think that is? Or what about sport cars is not that interesting anymore?
What's speed about? Speed is... Going fast is not a thing. I'll tell you what I really loved. I did a twin test of the Lamborghini Sturato and the Porsche Dakar.
Yeah.
The 911 Dakar is the best 911 for where I live and what I do and all that kind of stuff. It's just as fast, but you can put it in a ditch and it's not going to smash everything off. I'd have one of them as my sports car. The Sturato's fun, but that is just people who are high on espresso bolting big wheels to something. The Porsche was an engineered piece of kit. The Lamborghini feels more like a Friday project.
Yeah.
A brilliant Friday project, but it's a bit of it's not as resolved. They're the kind of things that I dig. So I'd have a 911 Dakar, Volvo Estate, Yeti. What are the classes of car? Because I'm with you. It's like I'd want them to do stuff.
So it is really utility with you. Like you're like quite aligned with what the driving you do and the tools that you would use.
Yeah, I don't do a lot of track stuff. So, but if I was, I'd have a dedicated track car. So I'd have a Radical or, something really, or a high-end Caterham 7. I'd do something very specifically, and I'd have a Resto mod. I'd have something really Resto moddy. But I like the Thornley Kellum stuff. I couldn't have a 911 because I'm just
too many.
That. But did you see that Aurelia that they did?
Oh yeah.
Like, if you turned up in your Huracan Evo to a party and everyone was watching you arrive, and then some badass turned up in a black Lancia Aurelia Outlaw, absolutely not a single person would look at the Lambo.
No.
And that's the kind of stuff I quite dig. So I'd be like, I saw a guy driving a blower Bentley down the motorway. He was like, got this massive steering wheel. It looked like a 40s road movie. He was bossing it. He was totally... There's a guy called Mike Sayer who drives Bentley's continuation cars. He was at Goodwood flinging this continuation Bentley around. And I just thought, that's so boss.
Yeah.
It's so cool. And don't forget, there's everything at Goodwood. And I was looking at this young guy, he's a lot younger than me, flinging like a vintage car around, going, yeah, boy. And I was just thinking, yeah, that's cool. That's really cool. So I'd do something like that.
Yeah, definitely. What's the AC/DC frontman called?
Oh, I do know.
Brian Johnson.
Brian Johnson, yeah.
Seeing him at Revival in a blower Bentley, wanging it around. You're like,
just wanging it.
That's just like peak, isn't it? It's like, you're a
well,
pretty cool dude.
He's not driving it. He's wanging it.
Yeah.
He's probably one of the slowest people there, but he's wanging. And I bet he's laughing his head off. It's about fun for me. Like if it's got to make you smile. It's got to make you laugh.
Yeah.
You got to be able to take people with you.
And that's when you sort of come back to the collections. Occasionally, I'll see a video of someone. It's not like Tim Zashmi, like doing a video of a collection because he's done like all of the collections, and you'll see the person that's collection it is. And I think there was one that was an American guy, and he just looked bonkers, like crazy shirt, crazy hat. You could see that the place was mental. And you're like, well, this is it. This is going to be interesting. When you get the other side, which is like a clinical surgical room, and they've got every single model of Ferrari hypercar, Porsche GT car, blah, blah, blah. Like, there isn't, as you say, there is no story.
That's a collection, not a passion.
Yeah.
That's a box ticking exercise sometimes.
Totally.
I don't dig that. If you've got the crazy guy who's got, and I bought a bubble car, and then I bought a Lamborghini, and then I bought a helium balloon, and then I bought a table lamp, and now I've got a Ford GT. I'm like, yeah, let's go. Let's go and have dinner. And then I bought something else, and now I've got a Miura. And I forgot I had a Miura, and it's in the back. They do that though. They go, oh yeah, oh shit, yeah, I've got two Miuras.
But have you seen this typewriter? For some reason, I got into typewriters, and
I've got 40 of them.
I've got 40.
Yeah, cool. But they're the people you want to go and have dinner with, and laugh with, and go. And they're the people that will accidentally give you a Miura because they feel like it. So you want to hang out with them just in case.
Yeah, just in case. What do you think of the sort of state of the EV world at the moment? I know you've driven a lot of the crazy high end stuff, and presumably a lot of the stuff in the middle. Where do you think it's all fit for purpose of that job, or do you think we're not? What do you think?
We're questing at the moment. We're questing. It's a new technology. Everybody's trying to figure out how it uses well. So immediately for me, commuting, getting rid of those diesel Astra boring cars, EV, really useful, super cheap to run, no localized emissions. We've got getting a greener grid. if you're bombing around doing boring stuff, EV's better. It's too heavy for sports cars. It does not make for sports cars because the way the battery packaging works, the way lithium ion works. If we can get solid state, which we are apparently getting next year, but it will only be in very high-end cars because it's expensive, it's half the weight and twice the power density. So you'll get parity in terms of weight with current ICE cars for sports cars. Then there's the problem of delivery. Like EVs aren't as interesting as ICE cars. They're just not, but they're very cheap horsepower. So there's no point now in ICE cars looking at 0 to 62 times because you won't beat an EV. You won't beat the Navara R. I've driven that car, not the R. I've driven the Navara. Nothing will beat it right now. So then ICE cars have to be more interesting, more fun. Matt knows that. He's just built a V16. Not because he needs a V16, because a V16 is just cool and weird and different and sounds odd. And that's what he says. It's amazing, but it's not. It's just interesting. So I think we've got to figure out what we want from EV.
Yeah.
And once they start figuring out the next generation of tech, as in the next couple of years, we start getting maybe an LFA with a solid state battery for £500,000. Those will charge in 6 minutes. And they are doing it. I've seen them working. I've seen them working in Japan. They will start to redefine whether they are useful. They just do not work in sports cars or fun cars at the minute. They're too heavy. There's just too much mass you're trying to mitigate to have a true sporting car. I love the Ioniq 5N. It's 2.5 tons. I love all the tricks and things. The only car that comes close to being sporty is the Navara, and that's because it's quad motor.
Yeah.
So when you start having 4 motors and individual wheel control, you can make the car feel however you want it to feel. And that car feels half a ton lighter than it is. But that's expensive technology that's only going to be in a Navara. Or expensive cars. I really like EVs. I don't think they're going to I don't think people have got their heads around them enough yet. And I don't think the tech is mature enough right now to cover all of the bases. But technology doesn't work like that. It doesn't appear fully formed.
No.
And working for everybody. But I've driven purely EV as my dailies for about 5 years now. And I've never really had a problem. I've had niggles. I've had things that I don't like. And charging infrastructure being one of them, it can be really, really annoying. But I really love them for just pottering around. I've got a Genesis GV60 outside that does 0 to 62 in 3.8 seconds.
Yeah.
It weighs 2.5 tons. And it's got massive internal space and it's quiet and really calm. I've got a bit of a thing about EVs though, because I constantly get, well, they're mined by orphans and kittens and, you can't recycle them and they catch fire every day and you have to replace the battery every 2 weeks. And I'm like, I've stopped answering.
Yeah.
I've stopped trying to argue because people don't want to hear it.
Yeah.
Anyway, that was a rant, wasn't it?
That's the classic answer when you start mentioning EVs. It's like, yeah, but where does the whatever come from? And you're like, yes, okay. Like, I'm pretty even on it. I have a little EV, an E208.
What have you got? Yeah.
Which is,
boring as hell, but it will do a job.
I find it quite fun. Like, I find it quite fun. I love that it does the job. Like, I never go to a petrol station. It's always charged. I pretty much never charge away from home. And I just get in it and you can just drive it flat out if you want. And you can pre-toast your bum. Like, great. Bish bash bosh.
And that's fine. We should be making cooler cars. Like the Honda E was like the perfect thing for me if I lived in town because it was super, super cool. But it just costs so much. So price is a massive barrier to entry. But
now, like Honda E and those sorts of cars, like I would say the R-Bath E, I'd put in that category. Cars with like 100 miles of EV range. What is that? It's not a car.
They're inconvenient. That's what they are. They're inconvenient. I reckon if you want a daily EV, you've got to get 250 to 300 miles of real. That's for me. So like Heathrow for me is 110 miles.
Right.
I don't want to have to, in winter, stop to charge on my way back from a flight.
Yeah.
So I need 250 to 300 miles of everything on, heating on, in the dark, there and back. Yeah. And that's my sweet spot. Other people have different sweet spots, but nobody, by the way, is getting in it and doing 400 miles and going, well, I can't stop for half an hour every 400 miles. It just doesn't happen. No. You're a long-distance trucker, and even them have tacos.
Yeah. And you start doing the time from stop to time to getting back in the car when you've stopped for a break. It's not like time to wait, go, queue up, get in there, start filling up, then you take it out, then you walk into the shop and whatever. It's like when you park your car, you plugged in. And then when you get back in the car. Now, for most modern stuff, if you've left home with full, which this is the problem. It's like if you can't charge at home, it's a very different proposition. Really
my charger broke and I've just had a month without, it's 3 weeks without home charging, and I've really, it's the game changer.
Yeah.
It's the game changer.
Could you even run a 3-pin?
Yes. So when I was at home for a long time, I put the 3-pin in, but when I'm working, I might get home at 9 o'clock at night and be leaving at 6. A 3-pin's bugger all use because it's not going to put much in it. Now I just charged away from home, and that thing, the thing I've got, the Genesis that I've got at the minute, it's got 300. It's an 800 volt architecture. So if you're on a big charger, it's probably 15 minutes. And walk in a modern service station, it will take you 7.5 minutes to walk to the toilets right at the back of the forecourt. Honestly, I don't really have a problem with it. Yeah. We did 24 hours around the M25 once in a variety of EVs.
I saw that article.
That was hard work. That was really hard work. But nobody had a problem charging or doing anything. But mind you, at 3 o'clock in the morning, I didn't expect to. But the funny thing about that one was everyone said, oh, you've got to stay at the M25 services, South Mims. And they all got camper vans and tents. And I was like, you're a bunch of weirdos and just book the hotel. Yeah. Like, did nobody think? Like, they all assumed that they had to stay in the car park. I was like, that's what it's for.
Cheap accommodation. They should. Just there.
South Mims, literally 40 quid. I mean, sticky carpets and death, but it was right there. But I mean, if you've got an EV, you kind of learn about them as well.
Yeah, you learn the technology and all the buzzwords and
how they work. But like my parents who do no miles would be perfect for an EV.
Yeah.
But I can buy them a car for $5,000 which will suit their needs. And the cheapest EVs, even though like a Corsa E or a E208, they've dropped in price now. You can get them for $10,000, $12,000. My parents don't want to spend that.
Yeah.
And they'd be perfect. You know, you just stick them on a little EV. It's like a golf cart. It'd be fine.
Yeah, I had that point recently where my mother-in-law needed a new car and she didn't want to spend very much money, like, I don't know, 6 to 10 maybe. That sort of amount of money.
Which is a perfectly good car, though.
Yeah.
A perfectly good second-hand pre-loved car.
Yeah. And there was plenty of options. And in my head, I was like, I wonder, though, because like, you're going to keep this car for a long time now. If you had a little E208 for, I think they're about 12. So you could probably get a Corsa E for 10. Like, actually, would that work for you? Because if it works, it will be so cheap to run. It will be really reliable. I think you can charge. Like, you're just like, this actually would be, as an ownership experience, probably really cheap.
Yeah, it would be. You damp it down to 4p a mile.
Yeah.
Which would suit them. But then, you know,
she likes doing long journeys, and like, I don't want to make her think about that.
No, exactly. That's the problem. If the one time they have to do a long journey, and they may have owned an EV for quite a while, and they'll go and do a long journey, no planning, nothing, expecting it to be the same, and then just go, yeah. The head explodes and they sell the car.
Yeah.
My dad reads the Daily Mail. His brain would explode.
Yeah. Electric cars explode. You're like, yeah. Do you know what petrol is?
He sends me videos that he's got from the golf club of LPG tanks exploding, and it's quite blatantly an LPG tank.
Yeah.
And he goes, it's an electric car. And I was like, have you watched the video? It's blatantly, electric cars explode, mate. Fair enough, but that's not an electric car. It's a ship. Dad, you've just sent me a car crash video and it's got no electric cars in it. Electric cars crash. Everyone dies.
This is a bit of a slightly niche topic. It's probably not even that niche, but this is definitely like self-interest. If you were state of like modern camper vans and like the VWs and the new one and whatnot, did you do something with the new VW one? Have you seen it?
Oh, I've done a video with it. I did a video of the new camper, but I do a lot of adventure stuff with roof tents. Right.
So in terms of, it's something I'm thinking of swapping my Mercedes for a camper van and just having that as like the sort of family car, but also being a camper van.
A lot of them are 4-seaters.
Yeah, which I don't think would be a problem for me.
No, just be aware of it.
But yeah, what's the chat in terms of if you were like, I'm happy to spend the money in terms of buying like a newish VW or whatever. Is it worth going like mainstream if you can in terms of the VW or the Mercedes or something and getting the sort of factory product? Or I know there's so many companies that will build something, or you could buy obviously the secondhand versions of any of these things.
There's an element of scene tax to VWs. There always has been. So you're just paying to have a VW camper conversion.
Yeah.
The flip side of that is they're a cliche because they're good. And there's a lot of people spent a lot of time thinking about how they work. And also when things break or you need something doing, there's a lot of people that can fix it, do it, help you with it. I think they're a nice size. That's the thing.
Yeah.
If you're thinking about a little camper, they make a lot of sense because they're easy. Ease of use when we're going in something like that is king. I really, really like them. I mean, I'd be tempted to go the other way and I'd get a Nissan Patrol and put a slide out in it and a pop top.
Yeah.
Because it would be slightly different. And you could probably do it for the same price.
Yeah.
And you'd look cooler.
Yeah. I'm not interested in going off-road.
Yes, you are. Or you yes, would be if you owned that car.
Yeah, exactly. We'll put the right tyres on.
Have you ever seen a patrol troopy, like with a bubble domey roof thing? And they were multi-people carrying patrols.
No. Does it have like a big extended bit at the back?
Not massive, but like stuff like that. You don't need half of the kind of campy stuff that people sell you. So I don't think you need necessarily raisable roofs and full kitchenettes and all that kind of stuff. You just need somewhere you can have a good kip. And then you can eat in a cafe. This is what you don't have to.
You can use someone else's chairs.
It's fine. It doesn't have to be. You can pare back that experience to being just somewhere to sleep.
Yes.
It doesn't need to be take everything with you all the time. You can just do it. A sleeping pad. I always like a duvet. I don't like sleeping bags.
Yeah.
And some pillows, and you'll be fine.
Yeah, it's true. It's finding that middle point of like this sort of idea that you've had, and you've gone, yeah, but if I have this, I'll do this and this and this, and then you're like
kitchen sinking it.
Just like distilling it down to like what actually is the bit that you're looking for. Do you need?
A lot of people.
Is it just a stove? Do you just want to put a stove in?
What do you want to cook?
A little camping stove.
Do you want some sausages in the morning?
Yeah.
You need a Coleman stove and a frying pan.
Yeah, exactly.
And sausages.
And sausages, yeah.
You don't need 5 rings.
No.
So it's like, just don't go overboard. Like buy a van and see which is why I think those conversion companies are sometimes quite good because you can make them how you want them to be. Storage is always the thing.
Storage for sure. But
just more storage.
I'm wary of designing something having had zero experience.
Oh no, they'll lead you through it. But I'd love to do that and just see how shit I could make it. Like, why did you do that? I don't know. I don't know why that exists.
There's tweed everywhere. You're like,
even the roof. Even the roof has tweed on it. But no, I love that kind of stuff. People think I'm anti-camping, and I am a little bit. It's because I do it a lot for work. And But my kids think I hate camping, and that's deliberate because I don't want to go camping when I do a lot of sleeping in cars.
Yes.
You know what I mean? But at the end of the day, have you ever been on a road trip where you just had to kip in your car?
Not really.
Oh, you massive loser. Do it. Just go and kip in a car. Take a pillow, kip in a car. It's fine. It's out of the rain. You know, that at the end of the day, if it's warm and out of the rain, it's a camper. So like your ET08 could be a camper.
Oh, that I wouldn't mind sleeping in that. I was just thinking like in a 911 or something like that would be pretty grim.
Yeah, they're a bit upright. But like you can camp in anything. You don't need all the flashy stuff.
Yeah.
One thing I have seen though, do they still do a 4-wheel drive version, the synchro version of the VW?
I think there's a 4-wheel drive, and then the newest one will also have a hybrid. That hybrid idea, that interests me.
Yeah, and you can run the traction battery as the, for the electrics in the van.
Yes, exactly. That makes perfect sense.
Yeah, I thought that made sense. How do you feel about having like a 1.2 litre engine though? I always get wary of that. I want like a V6 diesel.
I feel like that about any of the modern hybrids. Volvos, for example, they've got some pretty, even in the really like fast hybrids, it's got a pretty weedy 4-cylinder that you're like, this doesn't give. That's the thing I love about the V8.
C63.
Oh my God.
Like that whole furore, because everyone goes, yes, it's more powerful. I don't care. Don't want it. Don't care. That's not what I'm excited for. Someone said to me, I was talking to Matt Remats again, and he just turned around and there was this whole thing about luxury will be complication. Luxury will be about what you don't need, but you want.
Yeah.
Don't need it. I just want it. And I don't care. Like they were saying about Apple watches are better than mechanical watches, but I quite like a mechanical watch.
I like both on that one. Like
on
a bit like EVs. I like it for a certain purpose. And I'm not doing that. I'm not doing the 2-wrist thing. I'm not that watch nerdy.
I get it. No, I get it. It's a thing that suits the purpose, right?
Yeah, and I think we will get to a point, or we're getting to a point where people will pay lots of money for the right exotic experience. Your T50 or whatever, something like that.
Absolutely. The tourbillon.
But they're not going to pay the money for the ones that are in the middle that are not that. Like a really fast EV thing, no. Or like a really fast but 4-cylinder 3-ton.
Yeah. They'll go for spectacular complication, spectacular artistry. Like a GMA T50 is a very specific, ultra-engineered, ultra-wrought piece of engineering. The stuff at 80 grand that goes fast, just as fast possibly, but isn't that thing, is just going to die. Because we'll just go and buy a 30 grand EV for pottering around. And
exactly.
The GMA for high days and holidays.
And you'll have the luxury experience and you'll be like, this is my luxury wafter.
Yeah.
And an EV one of those is actually so luxurious.
And so good.
But I think it just sort of sums it up when you hear a car like the T50. You just see an in-car clip of someone driving one and you go, oh, yes. You don't need to tell me the specs. You don't need to tell me anything about that car.
Or how fast it's going.
Or how fast. They've not even, they're not, I don't think they've put out that data. I'm sure it's really quick.
Have they not? Have they not actually said?
I don't think they've said a top speed. I'm not even sure. I presume some magazine must have done maybe Top Gear.
No, I don't think we would have done
numbers
top
or anything like that.
No, and you can't do top speed stuff anyway because you run out. Even at Millbrook, you'd run out at sort of 2:30, 2:40. It's probably quicker than that.
It'll do.
But then again, that's irrelevant, isn't it? Anyway, but it's interesting that it's been designed for that. But
unless
I think
you're German. I've got a friend who has a 12C that he's had for like quite a long time, and he's like, regularly, I drive that quite a lot, and I drive it to the office, and regularly I will do 200 miles an hour. And you're like, what?
It's not that dangerous there, though. Did you ever hear of Klaus Picher, who had an F1?
Yeah.
So this is a legendary story. Like, Woking got the dial up for the servicing plan, and it just said every single day, twice a day, it did 210 mile an hour. Between 210 and 215, and held it for like a minute and a half. And then they rang him up and said, there's something wrong with your transponder because every single day, twice a day, it says it's doing it. And he went, yeah, that's when I go to and from work. Just held it for like a cash 3 minutes. At
So legit. That's so like, it just makes all of the AMGs and stuff and like these Brabuses and whatever that I used to see in the UK and go, what is the point in I don't even know what they're called, but like a 900 horsepower S-Class something or other. And then you go to Germany.
8-pot brakes.
Like, oh, I get it. Yeah. It's for a purpose. They've not just made it up.
I drove a Brabus Rocket that had 8 piston each side front brakes. Like it was half the brake disc. It was half the brake disc was brake caliper.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, they're grabby. They were locking the front wheels at 70 miles an hour. Went on the Autobahn, tried to stop it from 180, and it stopped like it would at 60. Like, that's what that's for. And it's very specific, but I respect the hell out of it.
Yeah. And the person that's bought it, or that owns it or whatever, they've changed. They've done a complete 180 in your mind.
Yeah, because they knew what they were doing.
Like,
but I needed that experience to let me know what he was thinking.
Most memorable driving triple journey?
Oh God, that's a really difficult one. I once took a Bentley. This is complicated, but this is one of the most memorable. I found out they built an undersea tunnel from the Faroe Islands to connect them all up, and there were 3 islands, and they put a roundabout in the middle. So I convinced Bentley to let me have a Bentley so that I could just go up while it was unfinished and do donuts around the roundabout 150 metres under the North Sea. And it was a force 8 gale on the ferry on the way over there. And there were so many people being sick, they let me drive the ferry in a gale. And I didn't get sick because I've got bad balance.
They let you drive the ferry?
Yeah, I was on the bridge driving the ferry. It was amazeballs. And then all of the people that were supposed to come back with us flew home, and I had to take the same Bentley back on the same ferry 4 days later. Brilliant trip.
Nice.
Still online.
That's mad. That's mad. Right. Most, if you're going to drive one car, see, I normally say sports car, but if you're
Skoda Yeti.
Skoda Yeti, bish bash bosh. Most undervalued car at the moment. What should be worth more?
Skoda Yeti.
Skoda Yeti. You can't say Skoda Yeti for this one. What's the most interesting car?
Most interesting car.
Yeah, what are you Googling, what you're looking up? Technology.
Oh God, that's impossible to say. I'm really weirded out by continuation cars. Like,
interesting.
People pulling up old chassis numbers and stuff and starting putting them together, but then almost like doing Resto mod because they're not quite making them as shit as they were. No,
they're making them better.
They're making them better, but they're not Resto mods and they're original. There's some interesting stuff. That BRM V16 fascinates me.
Yeah, that's a crazy thing.
That's a cool thing. But then the Nevera R again fascinates me because it's just mad.
Yeah.
Not necessarily my favourite thing in the world, but I respect the hell out of it. Too much stuff to give you an accurate answer on that.
Fair enough. Yeah. The Nevera and mainly Mate, I think, like fascinating. And a huge part of it, as you say, is I think you'll probably agree, is this sort of story and the people behind it of like, I kind of feel like I get a vague idea of what he likes, and he's made this thing, and they're trying to do something fun and different, and it looks like this. Whereas when another manufacturer comes up with that, you go, oh yeah, but you're focused on like lap times or something. That's not as interesting.
It's potentially because he's 12 years old.
Yeah, exactly.
And he's got control, so he's not a committee.
No,
which I think is quite interesting. Obviously, there's loads of people involved, but he's not a committee. If he truly believes in something, he can actually do it.
Yeah,
which is quite exciting, I think.
I'm very interested in what those two companies together are going to do moving forward.
They're going to do a lot of things we can't afford, Sam.
Ah, yeah.
At a guess.
Yeah, but hopefully that someone will do some fun stuff with them. Like maybe you'll drive them in the snow or something.
I've already done that.
I know. 5-car garage. Unlimited value.
Volvo Cross Country, G-Wagon diesel. These are all very specific specs, by the way. Skoda Yeti. Do you know what? I think I'd have a 911 Dakar.
Yeah. Would you have it all with all the stickers and stuff on it?
No, I'd do the stickers. But yeah, I think I'd have the roof rack on it. But even the light bar on that car was well engineered. It was like, this is really nice. And then I don't know. I would like something like that. Some outlaw vintage car that was a bit of a bitzer of kind of maybe slightly later contemporary parts, some kind of weird, like mad thing that I like. I always did. You ever see that guy with the blower Bentley that put it on the back and he had a Porsche
962 or something?
962.
Towed by a blower Bentley.
Fun. Did you not look at that and go, that is absolutely epic? Like something like that, something that everybody does.
I'm a road car,
and I am smoking a cigar whilst doing it, underhand, to keep it out of the wind. And I think that's what I'd do. Something crazy like that.
Yeah,
just be eclectic and cover the bases with all the boring stuff, and then go mental with the rest. Yeah.
Well, that sounds like that absolutely fits you. Obviously, that's the idea.
Thank you. I chose the right cars for myself.
Yes. Thank you very much for coming on the podcast.
No problem. I've really enjoyed it.
Get up and run around and circulate some.
I'm going to go and take a load of painkillers now. Try not to collapse. But you're lucky you got me, but I'm very pleased I did come. So thank you very much.
Thanks very much.
No problem.